So, in this video, we are going to be talking about how it is that they are purposefully confusing you when it comes to the economy, when it comes to interest rates, so that they can continue to conduct their monetary policy in a fashion that really not a lot of people are seeing, and that is through the credible threat theory. Now, to understand that fear, uncertainty, and doubt is exactly how it is that they control the narrative. Most people who live in fear, uncertainty, and doubt have no idea on what it is that's taking place out there, and so therefore you will be second guessing everything that it is that's going on within your life. So when you have many officials, many governors, many presidents, many people who are that of what we would think would be the leaders of our government, of our nation, and essentially, our society, we have a tendency to believe that they know what they are doing, or at least they have a good idea, or they have a plan that's in mind. And many times when I look at what it is that's being stated out there, or what it is that many people believe that has taken place, it's much involved in this fear or scare tactic or worry or no understanding, or, and better yet, accusatory. Like one of those particular energies that seems to be from with the energy that is, or with the information that is being delivered. And so when I listened to what it was that was being stated by Donald Trump just recently, when it comes to the Federal Reserve and the economy, I think to myself, man, if there was never a time when somebody was trying to pull the wool over your eyes, this would be it. Like, this is a prime example of it. And it's great. So I'm gonna play this for you. I left links down in the description. This is, stated, I think, when was this posted? Like a day ago, right? So this is really recent.
We're doing well and as a country if the Fed would ever lower rates.
Okay. We are doing well as a country if the Fed if they were to lower rates. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so that means the country isn't doing well. And a lot of people would agree with that. Well, we have the layoffs rising and, the whole, downturn and everybody's like fear of like recession and stuff like that taking place. I could understand that. But ultimately, the economy isn't really doing that bad. Like the idea of it doing bad is very real. But in reality of what has taken place, it's not that bad yet, right?
I would buy debt for a lot less. So we have a stupid person, frankly, at the Fed. He probably won't cut today. Europe had 10 cuts, and we had none. And I guess he's a political guy. I don't know. He's a political guy who's not a smart person.
Okay. So what was interesting, like he just said three things there that were like ultimately no information and no real opinion or anything about it. Like, I mean, he was basically saying like Europe did 10 rate cuts. And it was like, well, yeah, that's Europe. That's not the United States economy. Right? It's like, that's not even like, here, let's talk about the United States. And then all of a sudden just go, oh, well, Europe did it. And it was like, okay, well, Europe's a whole other country. Like they got a whole different economy going on. And then call him like Jerome Powell out for being stupid. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, again, I understand how the Federal Reserve operates. I understand how the FOMC comes to their conclusions when it comes to rate adjustments. It's 12 people voting, 5 alternates, 2 advisors, 19 people of the FOMC, or the people who conduct monetary policy. It's not Jerome Powell. So to blame Jerome Powell individually, saying, well, we have a stupid person at the Federal Reserve, you are literally blaming the messenger. So again, you're trying to pull the wool over my eyes. I know better. You can't do that to me, right? To say that Jerome Powell's stupid, it's like, okay, the first thing you said, irrelevant, doesn't mean a thing, right? And then the second thing you said, Europe, doesn't mean a thing. Yeah. Well, I can't even remember. What was the third thing you said? I can't even remember now.
He's done a poor job, and we had none. And I guess he's a political guy.
Oh, yeah, political guy.
Political guy who's not a smart person, but he's done a poor job. So we have no inflation. We have only success.
No inflation and only success. Well, that means the Fed did. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, am I getting it wrong? But did he just say that we have no inflation and only success? And we have a stupid person at the helm who's really not in control because it's the FOMC. Do you see? Is there a okay? Let's let them explain it.
And I'd like to see interest rates get down. It's hundreds of billions, it's even trillions of dollars that we're going to lose because of this too late. I call him Too Late Powell because he's always too late. I mean, if you look at him, every time
Okay, he's always too late. Oh, always, like, I'm thinking, always too late for what? He hasn't done anything. Too late for doing what? The Federal Reserve has been sitting on their hands for months. They hardly move at all. That's the whole point of the credible threat theory, is that they're using their words for guidance and not actually doing any actions. All right? But he's too late. Too late to do what? Like, too late means that you actually did something. He hasn't doing anything. Like, I mean, he's just sitting there, I guess waiting, right? I don't know. Anyway.
did this, I was right 100%. He was wrong.
I was right 100%. This is what Trump was saying. But didn't he just say that we had success? Inflation is down and we are successful. I mean, he just said it just a few seconds ago, right? And now he wants to blame Powell for what? The success? I mean, if he was right, then that means that we would have been failing right now and not be successful. You see how it's like, I cannot believe how much contradiction has taken place within his statements here. It's just like, it's incredible.
Maybe I should go to the Fed. Am I allowed to point myself to? I don't know.
Again, a bunch more irrelevant stuff to talk about, right? No, you can't. You can't go in and point yourself to the Federal Reserve. Everybody knows that, right? There's no point in even talking about it, but maybe we can joke around and, throw a bunch of stink into the air.
Am I allowed to appoint myself at the Fed? I do a much better job than these people. So anyway, we should be 2 points lower. It'd be nice to be 2.5 points lower. We'd be saving $800 billion, $700 billion. That's a lot.
800, 700, maybe $1 trillion. I don't know. It's a big number. It's a huge number. Huge numbers, right? He doesn't know.
Money, take it for nothing, for absolutely nothing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go very short term, like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months. Wait till this guy gets out, get the rates way down.
Okay, wait till this guy gets out. Like, again, more irrelevant. Right? I mean, nothing that he is talking about here has any kind of real importance or relevance. Like, other than hypothetical concepts that may come up as far as what would it be like if the president was in charge of the Fed. It's like, who cares? That's not that's not reality. The reality is something completely different. Nothing of what it is that he is talking about here is based in reality.
And then go long term, because we have a tremendous appetite for our debt because our country is doing well. But think of it, I got a call from Congress.
Did you just say the country's doing well? Right? Again, right? Like, why would we be listening to Donald Trump saying that we need to do what he is saying as opposed to what the Federal Reserve is saying when he just admitted right now that the country is doing well? It's like, no, we don't need to be like, why don't you just go sit down and let the Fed do its job? Right? And let us, the people, make the decision to go ahead and abandon the dollar all on our own. Because you're obviously using the Federal Reserve for your own gain. I mean, the amount of contradictions that are happening here within this minute and 23-second video is just unreal.
3 nights ago, sir, we can't account for the money coming in. I said, that's a good problem. The bad problem is we don't have any money.
And he walks away. Here's Powell.
From my standpoint, it's not complicated. Despite elevated uncertainty, the economy is in a solid position. The unemployment rate remains low, and the labor market is at or near maximum employment.
All right. Boom. The Federal Reserve is mandated to do 2 things. Low inflation, that's stable prices, somewhere around this 2%, whatever the hell that means, because they make that up and they invent the number of inflation, whatever it is that they want to say it is. They're mandated to keep that at 2%, right? Or somewhere around there. The other one is full employment. They're achieving their goal. That's all that Congress mandated them to do. They didn't mandate them to have rich people become richer, or property prices to stay elevated, or the stock market to be propped up, or the government to have cheaper debt. They are not mandated to do any of those things. They are mandated to do just that. Inflation that is low and stable, somewhere around this 2%, however you want to figure it out or believe it, and in full employment. Maximum employment. They are achieving that goal. This is exactly where they wanted to be. And so for somebody to say they screwed up, don't know what they were doing, or anything like that, that is pure uncertainty, fear, and doubt that they are pushing. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Inflation has come down a great deal, but has been running somewhat above our 2%.
As you know from the credible threat theory, the Federal Reserve has been shooting for moderately above 2% for some time to make up for the fact that they failed to achieve the 2% target over the previous 10 years from the great financial crisis and the quantitative easings of 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? COVID saved the day. Now,
longer run objective. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market
let me back that up
somewhat above our 2% longer run objective. In support of our goals, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged.
See, the Federal Open Market Committee, it's not like I decided to keep interest rates unchanged. The Federal Open Market Committee, they vote on this. That's why we have to pay attention to everything that the Federal Open Market Committee is saying. All those individual members, voting members.
I believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic.
Okay, did you hear what he said? Right now, I'm going to play it back again. Right now, he has the economy well positioned. Not he, they. The Federal Open Market Committee. What he was saying is that they have this well positioned to respond to economic downturns, meaning that they can now drop interest rates far enough below the neutral interest rate to stimulate the economy. This was the position that they were desperate for. They were dying for this position in 2018. You can go and read about it, Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World. It was a speech that John Williams had given where they were desperate for being in, they wanted this exact position, right? To be able to respond to economic downturns with an adjustment of interest rates. They didn't have that at the lower bound of zero. Right? Let me back it up and play it again.
Elements. We believe that the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. Overall, again, the current stance of monetary policy leaves us well.
I love how he elevates his voice. Again, overall, yay, we did it.
Positioned to respond in a timely way to economic developments, and for now, and we'll be watching the data carefully.
All right. I know the economy is very confusing for a lot of people out there. These people do not help. Donald Trump is probably the worst of them all as far as spreading the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. He was out there doing a press conference and talked about absolutely nothing. Nothing of any kind of relevance. When understanding the Federal Reserve and their monetary policy stance, it was important. It is so important to understand that at the lower bound of zero, they were failing and they were done. They were absolutely out of the game. And they knew it. They knew if they did not find an inflationary scenario in the future that it was over. The IMF was like, okay, well, you guys the IMF already knew it. The IMF was like, hey guys, you're like lame, totally lame at trying to create an inflationary scenario. Here you had the opportunity. The Federal Reserve was printing up money in an ungodly fashion in 2008. Quantitative easing blew the minds of every single economist and every single banker out there. They had no idea what was going down. They took their asset purchases of their balance sheet over the course of the next few years from $85 billion to over $4.5 trillion and failed miserably. People are looking at the Federal Reserve going, money printer go burr, prices go up. What else do you need to know? And I say, go ahead and explain quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4 failing to produce the inflationary scenario the Fed was looking for. People cannot explain that when they say money printer go burr, prices go up. Now, understanding that when the Fed was operating at the lower bound of zero, they were done. They had no monetary policy. Monetary policy ceased to exist. It was not available to them because monetary policy is interest rate adjustments. It's gone. At the lower bound of zero? Nope. IMF knew it. IMF says, hey, you're going to have to get rid of cash, go into a digital assets, and take interest rates into negative territory if you guys are going to want to stimulate the economy. The Fed's like, I don't know about that. We got other ideas. See, we got this makeup strategy. We're going to make up for the fact that we failed to achieve our 2% target over the previous 10 years. We're going to let inflation run extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time. And people are not going to have any idea why, unless you understood that they had a make-up strategy to begin with. And so now here we are sitting in a position in which that the interest rates are now elevated, and the whole problem that they were facing was a low neutral interest rate, which is the interest rate that's neither accommodating nor restricting the economy, and it's being pulled further ever higher every time somebody says inflation is going to kill us. When you see that running rampant through the news, when you see it in the narrative, it pulls the neutral interest rate ever higher. As it pulls that neutral interest rate higher, the economy becomes less restricted. And then here you got Donald Trump saying we got a great economy. Even though he's saying we should listen to me and we should lower interest rates. And the Fed is saying, no, we got our ammo back. We have a resilient economy. Unemployment is staying low. Full employment, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. Inflation is coming down to their 2% target, moderately above 2%. It seems like everything is just lining up extremely well, exactly the way they wanted it. And most of it is due to the fact that you have fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and they control the narrative with it. That's how it works. I mean, if you don't believe me, just listen to Philip Jefferson explain it. Here, let me, because I know a lot of people are going to be like, dude, you're full of it, right? I'm not. Right. I will go and find the link right now. Well, I mean, I won't put the link down in the description just yet. Let me see. Okay, where are my files? Files. There we go. Okay. We go to Philip Jefferson, who, where is it? Waller, makeup, strategy, Powell. Not in that one. It's in this one. Must be. There we go. Sorry, guys. I need to do a better job. I should have these things already printed out. Here we go. Okay. This is how it works, right? It's because they use their words. They're using their words in your idea of what it is that's taken place, and mainly it's the scare, the fear tactic, the uncertainty, and they create the uncertainty on purpose, and they admit to this. They admit to it right here, and I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to show it to you right here. Okay, the potential for and this is coming from Philip Jefferson. Let me just give you the title of the speech so you can look it up for yourself. Communicating About Monetary Policy is the title of the speech. It was given May 13th, 2024, Philip Jefferson. And it says this: the potential for misinterpretation is especially acute when many policymakers speak at the same time and disagree. See, like they know. The many policymakers, all these people who come out, who are the elected leaders, the people who are in charge, the officials, they come out and they disagree with each other at the same time, right? The misinterpretation is especially acute when many of them speak at the same time and disagree with each other. The diversity of viewpoints among policymakers lends itself to stimulating debates and, ultimately, better policy. Better policy. But in such situations, more communication could increase rather than reduce uncertainty about our policy. They know how to increase and decrease the uncertainty. They can do it by coming out and disagreeing or agreeing. By disagreeing, and many of them doing it, it lends itself to misinterpretation, acute misinterpretation. Now, this is Philip Jefferson. This is a different speech. This is February 21st, 2025. So just not even really that long ago. Reading between the lines, textual analysis of central banking communications. Central banks communications. Here we go. It says using textual analysis, high-frequency asset price data, and high-frequency central bank communication data, this research shows that investors' reactions to specific sentences communicated by the central bank are quickly incorporated into asset prices. You see how they do this, guys? They use specific sentences. They create fear, uncertainty, and doubt by many of them speaking at the same time, disagreeing with each other. Trump being the most disagreeable one of them all. And then by doing this, using specific sentences that are quickly incorporated into asset prices. It says here, policymakers know that their communications are, they know. That's what I love about this. This is a policymaker right now telling you that they know how to do this. How many times have you heard anybody come out and say, hey, man, by the way, they use specific sentences to alter the asset prices? They're talking about, Donald Trump is sitting over there talking about how it is that, the Federal Reserve should be lowering rates so that the government can have better interest rates to go into further debt or refinance their debt or whatever it is as he's trying to say out there. What I think is funny is that the asset prices can literally, and this is what he's talking about, right? Asset prices, the treasury is an asset. It has a value just like anything else. When the asset price goes up, the yield goes down. The asset price itself can adjust based on their words. They don't have to take action. They already know this. Every single word that they say are quickly absorbed into asset prices. They know the specific sentences to use. Policymakers know that their communications are likely to affect the course of short-term interest rates, other asset prices, and the associated economic outlook, resulting in an easing or tightening of financial conditions. They don't have to move anything, guys. They don't have to do anything. All they have to do is just put out the fear, uncertainty, and doubt to create the open-endedness that they can now communicate with specific sentences to alter the asset prices and create either a tightening or easing in financial conditions. They are admitting it right there. That's why when I see stuff like what Donald Trump did here at this press conference, which was really talk about nothing, completely superficial, there was not one single bit of reality involved in anything that he was talking about, creates the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that then gives them the power that they need to conduct their monetary policy. I know I'm the only one who talks like this, guys. I know I am. And I know a lot of people out there will say that I am absolutely crazy, that I don't have anything out there as far as another economist to collaborate this information or whatever. It's them telling you. They are using the mainstream media narrative against the people. 99% of the people will not be able to see this. When you have Donald Trump being in a position of mass attention that talks nothing of reality and 100% superficial stuff, all right? Oh, what happens if I'm president? What happened? Come on, man. Let's talk about something that we can actually use. Not talk about some hypothetical situation if you happen to be the Fed chairman, right? You just want to be the spokesperson. It's not like you have any choice on what the FOMC is going to be voting on. I know better. Everything that you're talking about right now makes no sense to me. When Donald Trump does that, I'm thinking, oh my God, you're just going to open up your mouth and just have like just pure diarrhea pouring out. You want to end the Fed? Do you really want to end the Fed? You have to understand the credible threat theory. By understanding the credible threat theory and everybody was to internalize it, they would not be able to operate. It would be over. Since nobody sees it and you have elected officials coming out creating the fear, uncertainty, and doubt on purpose and then using that against you, no, it works and it's going to continue to work. And now for me, I see the reality of the situation. I see how the economy is becoming less restricted because of the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that elevates the inflation expectation, not the inflation expectation, which is completely different. As that elevated inflation expectation pulls the neutral interest rate ever higher, the economy becomes less restricted, but the reality of inflation is down. Who do you think benefits the most from this? People who get a return on their capital investment and then take that capital investment and deploy that back into a low inflation environment? Who do you think is doing that? Do you think it's the working class individual who's benefited from that? I mean, is Joe Sixpack doing that? Probably not. So who creates this fear, uncertainty, and doubt of massive inflation expectation that is pushed and propagated and controlled in the narrative? Who's doing that? Who's creating this fear, uncertainty, and doubt when the reality of the situation is inflation is low? And Donald Trump even admit that. Says we have a great economy. Admitted that too. For who? Who gets to benefit the most from an elevated inflation expectation with a low inflation environment? Do you think it's the working class individual who's benefiting from that? I mean, do you think that's go Joe Sixpack, right? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But there's about 10% of the people out there, right? They're doing really well in this environment. When you see it, when you understand how, and you understand that the communications that are being pushed right now, I mean, you think about it, like, I think there was, hold on, I have 2 different articles right now from Fed officials that disagree with each other. Hold on, I think I even posted them before I started this. Where are they? Let me look here real quick. Where's my... Yeah, what was it here? Richmond Federal Reserve President Thomas Barkin said Friday there's no rush to cut interest rates given there's still unresolved risk that new import taxes might raise inflation. Christopher Waller, who serves on the Federal Reserve Board governor, said Friday the central bank should deliver interest rate cuts as soon as July. When many Fed officials come out and disagree with each other, and then you got, Donald Trump out there calling them stupid. You see how they're doing this? Like this is how they do it. They create the fear, uncertainty, and doubt on purpose to control it. And there is the example of it. That I showed you within their own words that they will do this, then use specific sentences to alter the asset prices, creating an easing or tightening in financial conditions. They don't have to adjust rates. They just have to deliver words. They have to deliver messages. And sometimes those messages is to create the uncertainty by them coming out and all disagreeing with each other. It creates a better monetary policy. This isn't me saying it. This is the Federal Reserve saying it. Remember that. All right. How long have I babbled on here? Good. A half an hour. That's ought to be good enough for all of you. All right. All right, a guy goes from end the Fed, understand the Fed, support the Fed. I do not go that way. I don't know. Do not think that I have any kind of one position inside of politics, inside of the banking administrations, or the financial institutions, any of that stuff. I don't have any belief. I have a belief that I have to understand it for my own position. Now, if it was up to me, I would much rather be dealing with an honest currency. I would much rather us be using something of a limited currency that is out there that keeps government from doing some of the things that they do. But I also understand the Cantillon effect. I also understand that our high standard of living would mean that we would import stuff and export our gold, and we would all be broke in pain and misery. Not me, because I understand what's happening out there. I'm going to position myself to do quite well in that. In fact, I'm going to do quite well in any position. I don't care. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't need it to be one way or the other for me to be successful in what it is that's happening out there. I just need to understand what it is that's going on. So when somebody says, hey, support the Federal Reserve, no, I'm not saying support the Federal Reserve. I'm saying if you want to end the Federal Reserve, you have to understand the credible threat theory. And by understanding the credible threat theory, you end up sounding a lot like you support the Fed. Right? Take it for whatever meaning you want. Okay? Like and subscribe. Thank you, John. I never understand why people think we have to always believe one way. I change my mind all the time based on a new information. Nathan Young, if you can't do that, like if you cannot, what is it? The mark of a mark of an educated mind is the person who is able to entertain a thought without believing it, or how does it go? Something like that. They said it was like, I don't know, like Aristotle or something, but I don't know if that was necessarily true. I think it was just kind of just one of those quotes out of history, but it makes a lot of sense. Let me see if I can find the real quote for it, so I don't have to. Let's see. The mark of an educated mind. The mark of an educated mind. Okay. Aristotle. I was right. Aristotle wrote. Okay, and this again, history. Okay, it's a mark. Okay, quote. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Being able to look at and evaluate different values without necessarily adopting them is perhaps a central skill required in changing one's life in a meaningful way. And so I totally agree with that. To be able to sit there and listen to somebody tell you a particular belief or an idea or a concept, and then to be able to internalize that and go, wow, that is amazing to kind of, wow, it's kind of mind-blowing. No, I'm right. You're wrong. I mean, but, to be able to actually take it in, no, I'm just kidding, guys. But you know what I mean. To be able to take in an idea or a thought or a concept, that's like, people who can't do that. Like I had a discussion with somebody at the Rebel Capitalist a few weeks back. And it got kind of heated because, I'm not one who's into looking at the economy through a political lens. And this dude was. And he was just blown away that I didn't see it through a political lens. And he could not accept it from any other way. Right. And as I'm trying to explain it to him through different fashions, I realized that he wasn't going to see it any other way. And it made me frustrated. Right. And I mean, I was visibly getting frustrated with it. I know I was. And so I mean, I took it as a lesson in life. I was just like, hey, just let people believe whatever they want. Right? And so instead, I was trying to actually convince him or look at it through the economic forces that were underlying and stuff like that. And I realized then, I was just like, okay, can't change people's minds. Either they are going to internalize the information, accept it, or they're not, right? And that's really what it comes down to. I try to see things from different points of view. By doing that, I am able to then look at debatable issues and then debate it from their side, right? And by doing that, if you can argue somebody else's argument better than they can, then you should be able to disassemble it if your argument's better. Right. And so that's really by understanding their point of view, standing in their shoes, taking it from their perspective, by fighting their argument in your mind, by in that position and understanding how it is that they feel about that particular opinion without actually having to internalize it for yourself, saying this is the way I believe, but I can take in the idea of what that is feeling like or what that is like. You know how many people have no idea on how what it would be like to be absolutely broke with nothing and homeless. Some people understand that feeling completely. Other people have no clue. I've heard people say, well, if those homeless people just go get a job, they would have a decent life. And I was just like, oh, okay, that's good. Nice try. Right? Obviously, you have no clue about what it is that's going on out there. And this ends up being the different mindsets that happen from it. So these people cannot possibly, and I've heard poor people say, the homeless people say stuff about rich people all the time, talking about how greedy and, all this stuff, right? About it. And I'm thinking, you have no idea about those people and how hard they work and dedicated their lives to the outcome that they live. Right? You think that they just got it for free. It just fell into their lap. Well, some people probably did, but it just fell into their lap. Right? Just like you're just a lazy ass. Right? Nobody understands it. Everybody has this prejudiced view about what it is that the other people are living like. Right? Because they can't see it in that fashion. Once you can understand it in a different point, well, now you got different views. Hell, you can really internalize a lot of different information. A lot of it. I mean, how many times have I been able to argue just about anything out there, or not necessarily argue, but come up with a counterpoint for all kinds of different viewpoints and perspectives and ideas and all kinds of stuff, because people have thrown so many questions at me over and over again that I've been able to like internalize so many different ways of looking at things, because so many people have asked me so many questions. It's just like, how do you not do it? You know, it was just like, all right, moving on. I was doing fentanyl after my dad died, but I refused to be another statistic. Well, good for you, John. You know, I mean, you can only save yourself, man. There ain't nobody else coming, right? Which hardware wallet should I use? Okay, this is the thing. People are so insistent on using external wallets and stuff like that. I keep the majority of my coins at Coinbase. That's where I keep the majority of it. It's not an advertisement for Coinbase. If you want, hit me up and I'll send you an affiliate link that I can get a little, commission from or whatever, or, kickback. But I'm not promoting their company. I'm just saying I feel safe keeping the majority of my stuff there, because I've had more than one, well, especially just one. The other one was my fault. One of them was definitely a scam, crooked exchange that stole. I would have had hundreds of, I had 250,000 Doge at one time with this crooked exchange, right? And I didn't know anything about it at the time. I thought I was doing cool, like, woohoo, look at me go, right? This exchange was called Cripsy, and Cripsy, just one day I couldn't log in. That was it. It was all over. They had all my coin, my money, and that's it. But it wasn't that much at the time. So, but now I look back on it, it was like, hell, I would love to have that 250,000 Doge, Back then it was like $10, it wasn't that much. But now I understand, what's happening there. And for the most part, not that I can trust Coinbase, but I trust them about as much as I trust any other bank out there. All right. Your spirit is in a perpetual state of self-contemplation. Just have to listen to it. Yeah. Did you buy Circle IPO, and is it too late to get in? I did not, and I have no idea. Has that Robinhood position been? Well, I mean, so far I took it. I mean, because a lot of I'm not going to really talk too much about it. I just wanted to give that out there so that people knew that I was up to it. It's not something I want to be like, hey man, you got to jump in on this and do it like me. I wasn't doing that, right? So that's why I want people to know about it, but I don't want to promote it or be like, hey, you do this too, right? So the position has actually gone down. Let's see, I put $200 into it now. I did a $50 purchase, last week, and another one this week, and both in Bitcoin and into the ETF. And I think it's down like $3, the entire position is. So it hasn't moved at all, essentially. But I don't really expect that to really start doing anything for a while. In fact, I would anticipate it going down for a little bit, because it's such a volatile stock or ETF that I had purchased. So I'm not really excited about it moving right away. I would anticipate it taking off, down the road a little bit. Anyway, I'm just gonna leave it at that. People get so mad at nepotism, but in the US, you earn it through merit. You build your wealth enough to allow nepotism. What's the alternative? When I lived in a poor country that wasn't capitalist. I don't know. I was thinking about it earlier today. Somebody was just like, how do you get in a winning position? And I thought to myself, literally, that was the question. How do you get in a winning position? And I'm like, hell, I don't know. I mean, I think that's the fight that everybody's trying to do. I don't how do you get into a winning position? And I'm like, okay, you earn more, require less. How hard is this? Right? I mean, you earn more, require less. That's how you get into a winning position. Now, what you do when you earn more, that's the scary part that most people can't take the next step into. They can't open up the Robinhood account. They can't open up, a Coinbase account. They can't open up a, they can't get a silver dealer account. They can't do this. All they can do is put their money in the bank and then hope that it retains their purchasing power, or to complain about it, or think that they're doing something by voting for somebody who's going to do something about it. Right? And these are the problems that most people face. Like most people are not, and like most people aren't lazy. Like they want to do stuff, right? Most people like doing stuff. Like, I mean, when I worked construction, we enjoyed working. Like we liked building. Like we'd step back at the end of the day and give each other high fives. Man, hell of a day. Look at what we got done. Look at all the progress that's going up. Homeowners would be super stoked. They'd be like, man, it's actually going together. Look at our house, right? It was fun. People like to do things, right? And so to understand, like when you go out there and you work every single day, right, go and chase something that is going to be excellent for you. If you are working something that makes you mad, then what's the point of work? Like that sucks too. So you might have a great job, pays you a lot of money, makes you mad. Well, how great is that job? I mean, is it worth it to you? I mean, like life is more than just having a lot of money. I mean, maybe you need a lot of money because you want a nice car. Well, okay, for me, I don't need a lot of money because I need a nice car, because I drive a 97 Suburban that's paid for. If it breaks down, I got the S10 over there to drive down. It's not any better, And then if I don't have a ride, my wife will drive me around in the 99 Explorer. Point being is that we don't have to earn money for new cars because we have vehicles to drive around. Our transportation needs are very low. Well, that's a lot of money that you can start putting towards Bitcoin and gold and silver and stocks. That's the point. That's the reason why I do it. People are like, "Why don't you get a nicer car?" And I was just like, "Because I like building up my assets." You know how, like they say, getting $100,000 in assets, in liquidable assets, or having $100,000 is the first 100,000 is like the hardest part. Yeah, I just kind of realized I'm like there. I didn't all of a sudden. It wasn't all of a sudden. It was a long road. I know I was getting closer and closer, as time went on, and every time I put a little bit of money, dollar cost averaging in, it would go a little bit higher and a little bit higher and a little bit higher. And it's taken a long time, considering the time I got started, but I stopped thinking about how long it was taking and saw how close I was to the goal. And then when I got there, I'm like, that really wasn't that hard. Right? I mean, it was hard. It was discipline and it was dedication. Well, that's not hard, right? I mean, it's boring. It's not very exciting. I would love to have gone to more Mariners games and gone to more concerts and gone to more trips and done all the other wonderful things out there. I mean, I would have loved to have done all those things, but then again, getting to the $100,000 in assets is the hardest part. So, yeah, it was hard not doing those things. That's the hard part. It's not hard buying into the positions. That part it was hard at first, but it's easy now, because the closer you get to that goal, well, the more you want to do it, and the easier it becomes. And then the hard part is trying to move away from trying to achieving that goal. It's like you almost get tunnel vision. It's like I can't do anything else but get there. Invest in yourself is the key for sure. Yeah. That's my one regret. Sacrifice concerts. Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. Sarah and I had been to a huge reggae festival in Jamaica when I was a kid. My mom loved traveling, and she took me. She was a travel agent at one time, and so we went down to Jamaica and we spent some time in the grill, and we went up to Montego Bay, and went to the Sunsplash Festival. We were up there for a night, and it was awesome. It was a great experience. Loved it. But that was really like one of the only concerts that I had ever been to. I went to some smaller like county fairs and stuff like that, but I'd never really been to like a full-on big giant concert. And so Sarah and I went and saw the Chili Peppers play at Ridgefield, which was pretty decent size. I mean, 15,000 people. I don't know how many people were there. It was quite a bit. And so that was a lot of fun to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers play last year. So, But yeah, it's like it's the only one I ever gone to, and they're expensive. Right? This game going up to see the Mariners, that was super. I mean, it wasn't super expensive, but it was, a pretty luxurious experience to take the family and go up there and do all that. But building memories for Freddie, I only got one shot at that, and I don't want all his memories to say it was dad was a tight ass who wouldn't take me anywhere. So taking the opportunity to go up there with my brother and my dad and Freddie and go and have that experience. I mean, that's priceless. Actually, I don't think you could put a price tag on it. All right. What else are we talking about, man? Let's break down some more credible threat theory or whatever. John Frusciante, one of the greatest guitar players. I'm in Tuscan today. Was 127 in Phoenix yesterday. Felt good. Felt good. My car didn't break down. Wow. All right. If you're young, don't miss concerts. Go to at least one every 2 years. Yeah, I mean, and that's probably not a bad idea. Like, I mean, there's people that I knew who would go to them, like, it seemed like they were going to a couple a month, or whatever. They were always going to another concert or getting tattoos, like a lot of tattoos. I've got tattoos, but I got them when I was in my 30s for the most part. And, although it would be fun to go get tattooed again, it's hard to spend the money on it. It's just like, oh man, the return on. Is essentially nothing, So, it's 110 in Vegas. I make sure my coolant system is good and glance at the temp gauge a little too often. Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, what I worry about is making sure that the windshield, like, if it goes summertime and it hasn't, like, rained for a month, I forget about the windshield wipers, and it was like, oh man, I meant to replace those things, and now you're driving and it's just smearing, or they're broken, or something of that nature. And what I think is funny about that is like I'm more concerned about the windshield wipers than I am about the heater or the defroster or anything like or the air conditioner. It's like, oh yeah, you got an old car. Does the windshield wipers work? Yeah. All right, cool. Rains 9 months out of the year. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Does that carriage drive an old vehicle like the millionaire next door? Your neighbors are not paying your bills. Oh yeah, who cares? Okay, I get it. No, I mean, well, I can understand. Like, I drove. Dad has a new Tundra, right? I mean, Dad's like, he's an old man. He's retired. He's got a bunch of money. So it's just like, what else is he going to spend his money on? He has this Tundra. He never drives it. So anyway, we drove that up to Seattle, and it was so nice. It was so nice. So nice driving a vehicle like that. It was comfortable. It was fast. It was, had all kinds of all kinds of coolness to it. Everything about it was awesome. And and I thought, man, it is cool to have a nice new car to drive. It is so comfortable. It's reliable. It's convenient. Like, everything about it was just rad. Except that I wouldn't pay the price for it, but I get it. And, it was a good experience. But outside of that drive up there, I wouldn't know what I would want the new vehicle for, because most of the time I just take my vehicle for a 20-minute drive to work, and then it parks in the parking lot for the day until I take another 20-minute drive home. So I guess for that 20 minutes each way, I could pay a lot of money to have a good experience doing that. But I turn the radio up and drive my Suburban, and it floats on down the road just fine. And I don't have a bad experience with this one. So again, like, save money and invest into liquidable assets, or stocks and bonds and whatever. Henry, funny, I became debt-free in the 1980s following Dave Ramsey's plan, and I have a portfolio that has everything in it. That's awesome. Like, you think about most people today, I don't think they really take into consideration on how easy it really is for them to get started, and how difficult it was for, from, like, I would imagine Generation X and older, had a much different time trying to do like a lot of what is so easy today. Like we didn't have Robinhood accounts and stuff like that back in the day. We had E-Trade. Like E-Trade was like the first thing that came out there on like the internet for trading with, right? There was a few different ones, but E-Trade was like the big one. And then it was $10 for every trade, right? So if you were somebody like me where $10 was like, I mean, shit, I was making like $8.50 an hour or $8.75 an hour or something like that. So $10 was a lot of money when you're thinking, okay, if I was to trade even $10 worth of stock, you could $10 to get in, $10 to get out. You know, it's just like it wasn't worth it. It's just like it was, you already lose 10%, even if you were to try to get to $100 or, 20% really if you're trying to get out. So E-Trade wasn't even really a decent concept for somebody who's like young or broke even. But now you got Robinhood. Now you got Cash App, right? You can buy $5 worth of stock. How cool is that? You can dollar cost average $5 a week when you're 18 years old, getting your first job, getting started. It's like, I'm going to do $5 a week. And then next week, I'm going to do $6 a week. And next week, I'm going to do $7 a week. And you dollar cost average like that, and you start increasing your average on what you're putting in there, pretty soon, you're cutting back on everything so that you can make sure that you can get $8 in this week. Right? And you get into that sort of mindset, and then, it doesn't take very long, and you're going to have a ton. You'll have a bunch. Most people can't do that. It's being disciplined, and that's the problem. Live like no one else today so you can live like no one else tomorrow. A guy is putting numbers into a tool, and how long do you expect to live? What are you asking me? Everything is amazing, yet everyone is unhappy. Yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. Like, I kind of understand that too, because, like, there's times when God, I got like hair flying out of my face here. I think about that a lot because I see a lot of times, and even in myself, like, I think, why is it that I even feel like down at times? You can't feel happy 100% of the time, right? And when things are good all the time and it becomes normal, it almost feels like you're unhappy, right? When things are just normal, it's like there's nothing going on. It's not unhappy or happy. It's just, right? It's just there's nothing going on, right? And people take that into like, oh, there's nothing going on. There must be something wrong. And so they always had to have this stimulation. That's why they're constantly on the phone, constantly, posting things or spending time somewhere like at the bar or whatever, is because if they're not doing something, then they feel bored, and that boredom is associated with something being wrong. And just understanding that being bored is okay. Picking up hobbies is fine. I mean, obsessing over hobbies is a different thing. And that's what ended up happening to me. Like, I would just, like, when I got bored, I would just study economics and, try to figure out, listen to things. Well, it became a complete obsession for me. Like, I, like, literally, like, obsessed over it. And I started paying, like, doing 6 hours a day worth of listening to videos or doing some sort of research. And I was just intense, just going into it so deep. So my hobby just became this weird obsession. Well, that's not healthy, right? So I turned my unhealthy obsession into something that became somewhat profitable to me and more like a job, right? And unfortunate for me, that's exactly what it ended up feeling like, was that I was being required to do this or of that nature, anyway, I turned that off too. It's like, don't worry about the money. Like, just don't worry about money at all. Just be in the energy of how money flows to you. Like, do things that make money. But don't think about how much money you're making. Like, this is like, if I do this, right? Like, that kind of thought is probably going to end up being very, I don't know, like, draining. I don't know how else to put it. But if you're just in the energy of it, doing things that would give you the ability to have money flowing towards you, And a lot of people think that this is some sort of like weird crystal gripping hippie thought, but it's not. It's just literally your thought concepts are constantly of one of how do I position myself for the flow of money? Or, and if that isn't working for you, do I position myself to stop relinquishing money? And that's another way of going about it, is just like, okay, what like subscriptions can I end? Where can I like, save back on travel expenses? What are, on, things that are not necessities, on luxurious things like coffee stops or whatever it is that you're going to. You start putting yourself into this sort of mindset, the subconscious takes over. Like, you don't have to think about it anymore. You have to do it at first because you're not thinking properly about it, right? You're thinking, I want a coffee instead of I want to put this into my, Robinhood account. You're thinking of pleasurable experiences instead of chasing excellence. And well, when you're chasing excellence, a lot of times it's hard work and it's boredom and it's stuff like that. And because you're used to chasing, pleasurable things that stimulate the dopamine hits and whatever. So when you start transferring over in this mindset and this thought pattern into something that is going to be more productive to you, and it's boring at first, the more you do it, the more you enjoy it, the more you realize, man, I actually have fun doing this, right? And so when you're doing that and you're enjoying it and it's making money, you're not thinking of it as being work, right? But if you're thinking, I have to do this, I have to show up, I don't want to do it today or whatever, then yeah, it becomes very draining and it's not very good energy that's going into it and stuff like that, which makes it very difficult. So even I myself have recognized that within the channel, where it became something that I was thinking, am I just doing this because I feel I have to in order to make sure that I have enough money to pay my bills and all that other. I just finally just let it go. It's like, either it makes money or it doesn't. Either people watch it or they don't. Either you're going to do well or you're not. But you have to go out there and you have to be authentic and you have to be real. And that's it. And just continue to be consistent with what it is that you're doing. I just took that mindset to it. Everything else happens, like, everything else will take care of itself. Right? It's hard to let go of the idea that it's going to, like, that, because the ego wants to be right. It wants to make sure that it's safe, and that's where it's just like, no, how much am I getting paid? I want to know exactly how much I'm going to get paid. I need to know exactly how much, because that's the ego thinking, I got to feel confident and real safe inside. But if you're just like, either I'll make the money this month or I won't, and some months is good and some months it's bad, I'm still going to try the same. And if things are like, if I do see where I need to adjust or I need to, make the change in order to, feel that I'm being successful, then the adaptation needs to happen as well. But recognizing that it's not a matter of chasing money itself, because when you chase things, they have a tendency to run. Right? They run away. Like, nothing wants to be chased. Nothing does. Like, holy shit, don't chase me, right? Everything has the same energy, and everything in the world essentially shares energy. Like, when you have a chasing mentality, something has a running away mentality, and so you share the energy with them. It's just like, here, I'm chasing, and then something else is like, okay, now I'm running, and so now you're like, yeah, why is it always fleeting away? Why, stop running? It's like, well, stop chasing, and that's hard to let go of all that stuff, and just be like, okay, well, I know my information's helpful, useful, encouraging. That's the energy that I want to be in. I don't want to be in energy of like, got to do this to make money, because if I do, then it doesn't really make that much money. Okay, moving on. The coffee has mellowed out. Haha, Simon's become waxy after the caffeine. I do get over caffeinated. I do. I mean, I admit it. I drink way too much. I never think about how I am going to get paid, but how much I am going to get ripped off. And see, this is the problem you might be joking, but even the joke within itself, the subconscious doesn't recognize whether or not you're being facetious or, sarcastic. The subconscious totally believes everything that's being heard or stated out there. And so if you are in a position in which that you are going to try and worry or think about or feel that you're being ripped off, you will be. Like that's what will happen. You'll be ripped off because, essentially you're getting delivered that of what it is that you're thinking about. Everything that you are thinking and feeling is what is being manifested into your reality. All right? It's a direct reflection of everything that you are thinking and feeling. When I was very deep, depressed, alcoholic, following the New World Order research and stuff like that, I had a reflection of the world that was very dark. Right? It was not, I mean, I was a decent person. Like I'm happy enough and joking around and got along with my friends and stuff like that. But my view of the world was a very depressive, dark place. And the reality was that. It was exactly delivered to me in the way that I thought it was. And it didn't prove me wrong at all. And then when I changed the way that I thought about the world and how it is that I thought about myself and the way that I was thinking about how I'm dealing with things, wow, the reflection changed. And the world became a much brighter, better place. And I thought to myself, wow, man, things have really changed out there in the world. And I wonder where the major change came from. All right. All-nighter up in the house. Great to see you, bud. Deja, hello. All right. Joseph. Good and evil is just another way to express harmony and discord in this realm. Yeah, I mean, and again, everything I think is good and evil is just really comes down to the meaning that you give in it and the feelings that you have about that too. Everything comes down to the meaning. There is no hidden meaning in anything out there other than the meaning that you're giving it. And that's it. Because we can look at something as a total evil intent and somebody else will look at it as a religious experience. I mean, I guess they both are. I mean, they're evil in doing it, and the other person says it was religious. That's both, whatever. So understanding that, everything is just the meaning that you decide. And if you decide that it's, greed and manipulation and hate and fear and worry and stuff like that, then the reality is that's exactly what it is. That is the reality. You're absolutely right, 100%. There's no way that anybody can argue with you about it because that's essentially what you're giving it meaning for. If I do something different, well, then that's me, right? And the meaning that I have given it will give me a whole different experience. Very much like the view of the world. It's a place that rips you off. Well, it's a place that can rip you off. Right? It doesn't rip me off. I don't feel ripped off. I feel blessed in every way. I feel like I'm swimming in abundance in so many different fashions. It's like, I think like, it was just like, I don't have a private jet that I can jump on and go fly anywhere in the world on. Right? But I think to myself, I could go anywhere I want. I can pretty much go anywhere I want at any given time. Like I can say, okay, hey guys, everybody in my life, I'm taking off to go to this place for a while, right? And nothing can stop me. I mean, it is just like, that's pretty cool freedom. Yeah. And understanding like, wealth is nothing more than food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. Like if you have food, that's a third of your wealth. Right there, just being able to eat and have the food that you want to eat and have healthy food. Think about that. That's like a third of wealth. It's just in the food and having access to food. Feel blessed in the idea that if you are eating what it is that you want in your life, you have a third of your wealth right there. Conveniences. Like a cell phone, this Suburban. My cell phone's broken. The screen's cracked. It was just like people look at it like, dude, why don't you get a new phone? I'm like, this one works great. There's nothing wrong with this phone, right? Yeah, the screen's cracked, whatever. Everybody has a cracked screen phone. The phone is operating just as fine as the day I got it, right? It holds a charge all day, does great pictures. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no point in me getting another phone, right? The convenience of having the phone has been met. I'm happy with it. Same thing with the Suburban. Same thing with a lot of things in life. I think about the food, conveniences, and then the last third of your wealth is pleasures of life. Food, conveniences, pleasures of life. That makes up wealth. If you have access to those things, consider yourself incredibly wealthy. As people put a price tag on it and say, well, if you have $1 million in the bank, you're wealthy. And I'm like, well, I know people who have $1 million in the bank and have absolutely zero freedom. No time to themselves. They cannot bail out anywhere they want at any given time. They have to be at their spot in their life every moment of the day, or else things start to unwind and unfold quickly. That is not a position in which that I want to be in. Right? Not right now. I got a family. That's my position that I want to be in. Everything is dedicated to that outcome. So everybody has different meaning in their life and what it is that they plan on doing with what it is that they consider their wealth, which again is their food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. And if the pleasures of life is a lot of luxurious experiences, well, then you're going to have to make a lot of times freedom sacrifices in order to achieve those things. Maybe not. Maybe you win the lottery or something like that. But most lottery winners aren't really happy with their winnings anyway. Like, they blow it and end up being broke and spent it all and depressed or whatever. It's because the path to get there is the reward. Like, it's the journey itself. The outcome, like, the money itself, that's like, okay, cool, that's neat, that's awesome. But it was everything that got there. That's where the real fortune is found. And so knowing that it's all a matter of just, being helpful and useful and encouraging and dedicated, and just like being in that sort of energy and feelings, and then position yourself to be in a flow of money, it's just going to naturally show up. It's almost as if it can't help it. And there's plenty of things that I could be doing out there to encourage it or make it happen faster or more frequent. But then again, I'm like, what was my goal? This. Like, I'm doing my goal. Like, why would I screw up achieving my goal when I am achieving my goal? Spending a lot of time with my family, being able to pay my bills on time, having freedom, being relaxed. Why change that? Like, I just don't get it. Like, to me, there's nothing in my life that I need to change. I just need to keep doing exactly what it is that I'm doing. And when a change is needed, it'll show itself. I don't want to cheat and find an app. I will go out there and try and see the bird. All right. I'm single and don't know if I'll ever have kids. Yeah. I feel ignorant not knowing what kind of bird that interesting song is, but I'm enjoying it. What are we talking about? All right. Simon is an every person's person. Well, thank you guys. I mean, the thing about having, like, it's weird, like, having touched like this edge of like this pseudo celebrity, I don't know, this quasi celebrity, celebrity status kind of thing. It's kind of weird. Like, I don't feel it except for times when I'm like at the Rebel Capitalist and I have like, these people kind of crowding around me or, whatever, or going to one of the conferences. It's really that kind of experience. It's like, oh, whoa, that's not something I'm used to, Most of the time, I'm just selling 2x4s at a lumber yard and loading them up in the back of a truck. I don't really think of like having like any kind of celebrity kind of things. But then, when you have a lot of clout on YouTube and, you're out there, basically getting out there and sharing and building up this audience and stuff like that, it ends up giving you a whole different feeling on what things are like out there. I kind of forgot where I was going with that. I forgot my point, guys. I'm sorry, I spaced out. Train of thought derailed. All right, Simon speaks the truth, strong child of God, to see through the BS. Oh, and that's what I was kind of getting at. To be able to look at things from like other people's point of view. So like having like been in a position in which that you see other people look at you and they think, oh my gosh, like you're like, I had a guy come into the lumberyard one time and just wanted to like, just shake my hand, just meet me real quick. And just like, he was passing by and it's not a problem. He just comes in, hey, hello. And that's wanted to say hello and meet you and whatever. And he was just passing by. But as he came in, he was like, okay. And he was like nervous. And I'm like, I'm just a dude, man. I'm nobody special. I'm not anybody you need to be nervous around or anything like that. Like, I'm not I'm not anybody, I'm just another dude at the lumberyard. But I also understand that for other people who have been following me on my channel and like watch every video, especially these ones where I'm doing them for over an hour, they really get to know me. Like I tell my story, I talk about some of my experiences and the day and all this other stuff. They really feel like they know who I am. And I don't know anything about them. So it's literally like this one-way street experience that they really know a lot about me, and they have like this connected energy to me, and I have like no connected energy to them other than knowing that they're a fan, right? And that's it. And so it's really difficult to share in that same experience for them. And I try to make it very like, awesome for them, just like, hey, 'cause like get this, guys. Actually, on the way up on I-5, I stopped at a rest stop, went in to go use the bathroom, and while I was walking in, there was this dude who walked out who recognized me from the channel. He's like, "Oh, right on, the Uneducated Economist." So I think about it, like the places that I meet people sometimes who recognize me is in the oddest of places, like it was just the other day. And so I know that's a fun experience for them, and so I try to make it fun for them to meet, somebody who might be somewhat of a, like I try not to try to feel like egotistical or something like that, saying that I'm a celebrity, because I don't really think of myself as a celebrity, but other people might see it that way. And so I try to make it fun and encouraging for them, knowing that I'm not like the George Gammon, right? Like George Gammon is a whole different level from me. And most people who don't know anything about me, they see me as just a regular, average, everyday dude, because that's essentially who I am. But I can take on this position for a lot of people when they have this view of me in so many, from the George Gammon level all the way down to just the regular, average, everyday dude. And it's not me. Like, I'm the same person. Like, I don't change. But how it is that people are familiar with me is very different. It's so different. Like, the customers down there at the lumberyard, they don't get nervous talking to me. In fact, sometimes they get upset because I'm not delivering, through on, something that I promised them or something like that. It's a sales position. So you can't win all of them 100% of the time. And, so that's a whole different experience than somebody who's just like, dude, I follow every video you put on your channel, been with you for years, man. It's so great to meet you. That's a whole different type of experience, And then understanding it from, how people live, like, knowing that the day-to-day experiences of somebody like George Gammon, when he took us out to dinner and it was just like, nah, put 2 guacamoles out there, stuff like that. Like, he didn't think twice about some of the stuff that, because it's like, buying dinner, that's not a concern for George Gammon, right? But if you're a day job who's working an hourly wage, buying dinner for everybody would be a concern for you. Like, it would be, you're thinking, man, how many days of work do I have to go through in order to pay for this huge dinner that's going on out there? It's a completely different mindset. Right? And so when you're, hanging out with different groups of people, like, I totally get the feelings that different people would have as far as, their experience of what it would be like to go out and buy dinner for everybody, and what kind of impact on their life that would have. Like, somebody who actually thinks about, like, man, me buying dinner for everybody is a really big deal because they have to work an hourly wage for it. And it might be something that they really want to do for everybody. And by doing that, it's like something that they feel really good about doing. Where somebody like George Gammon, although he probably feels very good about buying dinner for everybody, the impact on his life is probably pretty small. And so it was just like, hey, man, let me buy you dinner, and it's no big deal. Where the other person, it might be a big deal. And understanding those feeling differences that are happening within it. And I'm not saying that not everybody can do that. Plenty of people can do this. But to do it regularly and to understand it from an economics point of view in that fashion. And this is why some people look at the economy from 30,000 feet and other people can look at it from the ground. And to be able to see it in all lights, in all fashions in that way. Like, I don't know what the experience of having $100 million would be like. I don't know what the real feeling of that is like. I've tasted the edge of it, like I've gotten, some experience in that, but not full on, right? I don't know, I'm a day job. I'm a regular everyday Joe, right, working blue collar worker like everybody else is. And so having touched and feel somewhat of the experience of it, I can kind of have a mindset that says, okay, this is what it would be like. Maybe not full on understand it, but got a good idea. And I've never been in the gutter homeless heroin user, but I've kind of come close to the edge of some of the experiences that would be, considered in the gutter or loser or something of that nature. So, that's a pretty big realm of experiences to incorporate into your thoughts. um, Investing makes having a job fun. Actually, you're right about that. You're right. When you start investing and you do it regularly, you start getting excited about the next time you get paid so that you can put more money into the market or into your positions or whatever it is that you got going on. So I agree with that. Like when you start investing, especially when you get to a point where like, if you lose your job or something like that, you have money to carry on. Like you're not worried about losing your job and paying your bills. There, for most of my life, one missed paycheck and I'm done. Right. That's I look back on it and I think, holy crap, that is a scary position to be in. I didn't feel that scary at the time. It felt very normal. And I'm like, whatever. Literally one paycheck. I miss one paycheck and it's all over. Right? There's no bills getting paid, rent's all like, it's all done, right? And that's like so incredible to imagine that that's the way that most people end up living throughout the entirety of their life. And that's the way up till about 5 years ago, that's the way I was. It was not until the YouTube channel really started taking off that I was able to pay off my debts and then position myself in a way that I could have, more income than I have debt or have money or bills. And so with that, I was able to start investing, and you're absolutely right. The job became easier and, in all kinds of ways. Like even just being there felt better knowing that I didn't really have to be there. Like I could do something else if I wanted to. I'm choosing. I don't have to. I choose to be here. And when you choose to do something, it feels a whole lot better than having to do something. I agree. Yeah. Investing makes everything better. It just makes everything better. Like your position loss hurts, but if you are okay with longevity, like I'm in it for the long haul, right? Or I'm diversified into a lot of positions, the volatility, it doesn't concern you that much. Like my biggest positions are in cryptocurrencies. So volatility is something that I am incredibly experienced with. It's like to me, volatility is just like, yeah, one day it's just like it's up $5,000, the next day it's down $10,000, the next day it's up $6,000. It's like for most people, right? To me, like that is very normal because being in cryptocurrencies, that's essentially what you're going to experience. Um, and that might be a little exaggerated on the on the amounts there, but for some people that's the way it is. And for me, like I don't get concerned over those things. Uh, Somebody might see like, if they put $100,000 into something and it started falling $8,000, they would panic and pull the money out. And to me, like I probably wouldn't even notice that kind of move. It's just because I'm just so experienced with that happening. The more I put in there, right? I look back over time, like 2 years ago, I only had $50,000 in there. Well, now I got 100,000. It's just like I don't remember putting 100,000 or $50,000 into this, right? No, it's because the price has moved up so much. So yeah, being in it consistently all the time, and be aware that it's volatile. If you're not willing to deal with volatility, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just like it's hard to be safe and get a return. There are places that you can go to. If you're into it for a really long time, then you can get into like treasuries and stuff like that. But for the most part, that's not a great return, 4% or so. It's not bad. But if you have an inflation expectation of 3%, then really your real interest rate of return is only 1%. Yeah. So that's not great. Yeah. And that's me personally, but that's a position that you should probably be in as right? Part of the diversification into other things. I was here at the beginning of the stream, but had to run an errand. Well, I'm glad to see you back, bro. I don't know how much longer we're going to go for. We got 151 people watching with 252. We added up over 300 and something, 327, I think I saw I get up to at one point. I've been in and out a bit. Didn't get here till an hour in, though. Well, I'm glad to see you up in here all-nighter. I don't know if I should ask the question. Could be too simple. Ask the question. Do you think war's coming? Well, I think wars are inevitable within the economy. I think that's actually like baked into the economic cake, right? The economic forces, essentially. When you take it back to the idea of the most primitive way of looking at the economy in the way that Cantillon described it, and of course, it's not very politically correct to say it, but he's talking about the savages of the Americas and how they fight these bloody battles over hunting grounds. Kind of looking at the economy as the basis of that, right? Tribal wars over hunting grounds as the basis of economics. We all can't be here if we're all going to eat. The land can only produce so much food. And if we try to all live here, we're going to starve. So they start to fight, right? And that's the economy, right? So wars are almost inevitable. They're like it. Like you think about if you are desperate, like a desperate man. Think about a desperate man who's at the very end and just lost it all. And now they just don't care anymore. It's like their life is coming to, it's like everything is disintegrating, everything is getting lost, everything is disappearing. They have nothing left to live for, and they're hungry. Like, do you think that's a pretty dangerous person? It would be a pretty dangerous person, right? So, yeah, that's how come there's wars. It's the same thing. When these countries get desperate, like if you were a very successful country and you were in a position in which that the money was now flowing away and your way of life was going to deteriorate into pain and misery, would you fight to try and hold on to it? Probably, right? I mean, you would do something, oh my God, I guess it's pain and misery time, let's go do it. No, of course, you would try and do something. And fighting to keep it is generally what ends up happening. So wars are inevitable. Secondary question. The effect may be proportional, but not one for one. A change is one rate will not affect the other rate by the same amount. Let me go read another. All right. Prime rate affects bond rates. Bond rates affects mortgage rates. Mortgage rates affect guaranteed certificates. Is that correct? Okay. Let's think about this in a different way, because like essentially the 10-year treasury, if you want to know which way interest rates are going to go, follow the 10-year treasury. 10-year treasury is really essentially like the direction that everything is going to follow. Ultimately, the US 10-year treasury is the prime asset. Okay. The Federal Reserve's Fed funds rate is a short-term overnight lending rate between the big banks. That's it. It's not something that is mortgage rates or treasuries or anything else. It's the overnight short-term lending rate of the big banks. So you can, like, understanding the Federal Reserve and how they adjusted the Fed funds rate a few years ago And then how they changed it is a better understanding of how these interest rates adjust. Right? Because the Federal Reserve has a couple of things as far as their toolbox go. They have interest rate adjustments and they have balance sheet adjustments. And those are two different things. When I hear like Donald Trump say the Federal Reserve should be lowering interest rates and it would be so much cheaper for the government to borrow, and I was thinking, well, what you're really saying is the Federal Reserve should be doing quantitative easing, which would lower the interest rates on the 10-year Treasury, because the Federal Reserve would be going there and buying up that asset, which would then lower those rates. So that's really ultimately what Donald Trump is saying, right? Because if you were to just lower the Fed funds rate, what you're doing is you're going to lower the overnight lending rate of the big banks. So let's understand it the way that it used to operate. The Fed would adjust the Fed funds rate, which was a target rate. The effective fund rate was the overnight lending rate between the big banks. The way that the Fed would adjust that rate is by buying and selling treasuries off these big banks. Right? So you got JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all these people. These are the big banks, right? The primary dealers. The primary dealers are the ones who go to auction to buy the treasuries. The Federal Reserve then buys the treasuries from the primary dealer. The Fed cannot buy treasuries directly from the government itself. They have to buy it through a secondary purchase of like the primary dealers, right? So everything that they are purchasing is something that has already been purchased. Now, when the Federal Reserve is adjusting the reserve levels of these big banks by buying and selling treasuries back and forth to them, they have a reserve requirement. So back in the day when the big banks had a reserve requirement, at the end of the day, some banks would have excess reserves and some of them would be in need of reserves. The ones who had excess reserves would lend them to the ones who were in need of reserves. This overnight lending rate was the effective fund rate. So if the Fed wanted to adjust interest rates, what they would do is buy and sell these treasuries to adjust the reserve levels within these big banks, and then that overnight lending rate would essentially be established by how many reserves were in the system at the time. Does that kind of make sense? So again, like the Federal Reserve wasn't in charge of treasuries and the yields on those. What they were in charge of was the reserve levels of these big banks. So at the end of the day, when they were trying to meet the reserve requirements, the ones who needed those reserves would go to the ones who had them, say, how much are you going to lend me the money, lend me those reserves for? They would say for this amount of interest. If that interest rate was in line with the Federal Reserve's target, then there was appropriate amount of reserves. So again, if they wanted to increase or lower the reserve or the interest rates, they would buy and sell treasuries off these big banks, increasing or decreasing the reserve levels within these banks so that the reserve requirement would be met at the end of the day at the interest rate that they were trying to target. So that makes sense? Things have changed, right? They don't do it that way anymore. So back in September of 2019, there was this huge corporate tax payment that had been made that took a bunch of cash away from the big banks and sent it over to the Federal Reserve to an account called the Treasury General Account. So now, again, it's just basic money within the accounts at the Federal Reserve. Point being is that this cash wasn't in the bank's accounts. It was over at the Treasury General Account, right? So now these big banks didn't have enough cash to operate the next day. They couldn't meet their reserve requirements, and that overnight lending rate, which I think was somewhere around 2% or something at the time, shot up to like 10%. Right? And it was way out there. And essentially the financial system was going to freeze. The Federal Reserve stepped up and they said, oh, no, right? We're going to open up the repo facility. There's been a bunch of government spending. You guys are loaded up on those treasuries. We will take the treasuries off your hands and hand you cash, and we'll flip this every single day. And this is where the non-QE, QE kind of concept came in. Right? The Federal Reserve wasn't going into exact asset purchases, but they were purchasing the assets off these big banks for like a day, right? And giving them enough cash to operate with. And then like these operations spanned out, I think it was out to like 90 days or something like that. So anyway, it was this repo facility that had essentially established the Fed funds rate, or where the effective fund rate was going to be, this interest rate that the repo facility was generating with these big banks. So it wasn't like the overnight lending rate from the limited reserve system. quantitative easing started firing up, they loaded the banks up with reserves. They had no reserve requirement, and the repo facility was essentially where all the cash was going to be deposited for some sort of return. So now they had this excess reserves. The big banks did. The Federal Reserve has another place for that. It's called interest on excess reserves, the excess reserve accounts. So now here you got the repo facility where most of the money is going to get a return, right? And then you have the account on excess reserves. And so between these two accounts, the repo facility and the interest on excess reserves, they were able to channel the Fed funds rate. So this is how they were able to establish where the effective fund rate is going to be. And is the repo facility and this interest on excess reserve account. Again, this doesn't have anything to do with mortgages. This has to do with overnight lending between the big banks. So now you have something called the balance sheet. Now the balance sheet is something that's totally different. This is the Fed's assets and liabilities. Now, just like any other balance sheet out there, you have assets and liabilities. The Fed's liability is all the money. Like for us, that's the asset, right? The Fed's liability is our asset. Our liability is the Fed's asset. So when we write out our signature onto a document that is a loan that we promise to pay back, that is creating the asset for the Federal Reserve, right? Or for the banking system in general. When they put out the money, when you say, okay, I'm going to borrow, $10,000 to buy a car, you sign the loan, they give you the check for $10,000, they're giving you their liability, right? They need that $10,000 back plus the interest that goes with it, right? So this is the way to look at it. The Fed's balance sheet has assets on it and liabilities. The liabilities is all the money. The assets are the mortgages, the U.S. Treasuries, special drawing rights, which is a basket of world currencies, gold, if you can believe it or not, right? Gold sits on the Fed's balance sheet. So the Fed has a balance sheet of assets and liabilities. Part of these assets are the mortgage-backed securities. Now, a mortgage-backed security is pretty simple to think about. If you took a box, right, and you loaded it up with a bunch of mortgages, like my mortgage and the neighbor's mortgage and all that, you put it into this box, and then you sold that entire box off. That's the mortgage-backed security, right? So it's like all these mortgages all jumbled into one purchase, one investment that you can purchase. Now, that's really, really oversimplified on what a mortgage-backed security is because they're actually cut up into different tranches that have different investment grades and all that other stuff, but we're not going to go into the depths of that. Just to understand that the Federal Reserve is buying mortgage-backed securities, right? So they're buying essentially what is a bond, right, that is backed by mortgages. As people pay their mortgages back, the asset, whoever holds the asset, gets reimbursed for that. And so just like any other asset out there, this thing has a price tag. If the price of it goes up, the yield goes down. So if there's a lot of demand for mortgage-backed securities by investors, because there's investors out there who want a fixed income, and when they're diversifying their fixed income investments, mortgages might be one of the positions that they want to get themselves into. Right? So there are investors out there who do want to buy mortgage-backed securities. And so when you see the price of these mortgage-backed securities fall, the yields are beginning to rise. When the yields rise, this is where the investor starts to look at it and say, okay, how risky of an investment is this? If the yields are high enough for the return to the investor to say, yes, I'm willing to take on that risk, this is where interest rates are found for the mortgages. So again, if the investor is like, hey man, I am really cautious about this, the price of the mortgage-backed security will continue to fall, but the yields will continue to rise. This is why it becomes very expensive, or the interest rates on mortgages are high. It's not the government's fault. Right? The government didn't establish this. This is where the investors are feeling comfortable. Now, if you have a big-time player in the game like the Federal Reserve who says, hey, I'm going to print up money and I'm going to buy mortgage-backed securities. Now, what happens to all the demand for these mortgage-backed securities? Right? All of a sudden, there's this huge player in the game. Well, the demand goes right through the roof, and the price does too. Well, if the price rise for mortgage-backed securities, the yields fall. So people wonder where it is that the cheap interest rates come from for mortgages. Well, it comes from a big time player like the Federal Reserve printing up money and buying mortgage-backed securities. And now, again, they don't just go right out there and buy mortgages. They're buying them from the, anyway, right. We can go into a long discussion on how that works too. But to know that there is this player who is in the game. So when they say the government is in charge of interest rates, not really. It's this private central banking system that is in charge of a short-term overnight lending rate that does influence longer-term rates as time goes on. And then if they are participating within a quantitative easing aspect, which is them essentially printing up money and buying the assets, which are treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, and other things out there, the purchasing of these mortgage-backed securities then limits the amount of mortgage-backed securities that are available for the other investors out there to buy. And if they are in a position in which that they know that there is a buyer like the Federal Reserve, they can attempt to front run the Federal Reserve by buying into the mortgage-backed securities, knowing that they would be able to unload those onto the Federal Reserve itself. This creates a lot of demand for those mortgage-backed securities and lowers the interest rates. This is how it happens. So let's think about it, and everything being equal, opposite, right? So as the Federal Reserve unloads or unwinds their position in the mortgage-backed securities, where they are allowing mortgage-backed securities to just roll off. Now, what that means is as people are paying back their mortgages, when they are completed, like, you're done paying your loan off, you get the title, right, for your car, or you get the deed for the house or whatever. This essentially is paying the Fed back. Their asset disappears because they have retrieved their liability. So as mortgage-backed securities are getting paid off, or they could sell them, right? Like literally sell the mortgage-backed security on the market, get their liability back. This is unwinding of the balance sheet. As they unwind the balance sheet, this is literally bringing money back in, quantitative tightening. Right? So this is, again, how the Federal Reserve can adjust interest rates is by stepping back into quantitative tightening, or I'm sorry, step out of quantitative tightening and back into quantitative easing, right? Where they are actively purchasing these mortgage-backed securities. Right now, they are allowing those mortgage-backed securities to come off the balance sheet. So now, as a lot of people were concerned that the Federal Reserve was going to be dumping mortgage-backed securities out there onto the market, which would then flood the market with all these bonds, there wouldn't be enough investors out there to absorb all the bonds or all the mortgage-backed securities that the Federal Reserve was going to be unloading off the balance sheet during this quantitative tightening process. This is what concerned a lot of people and thought that the interest rates on mortgages were going to shoot up to, 15, 20%. There was all kinds of nightmare scenarios on this happening. Well, as the Federal Reserve started going into quantitative tightening and unloading these mortgage-backed securities onto the market, the investors stepped up and said, there's the price. That yield, that price, that's the ticket. I'm here. Right? And the investors started buying the mortgage-backed securities, which capped how far those yields were going to go. That's why we saw interest rates on mortgages shoot up to like 7% almost instantaneously when the Fed said that they were going to do this, where they were going to raise rates, right? Unload the balance sheet. Those rates shot up to 7% because that's where the investor stepped in saying, hey man, that's my ticket, that's my price. And they couldn't go any higher because that's where the investor was stepping in and supporting the market. So once we think about it in this fashion, then we understand that they don't really have control in the fashion that a lot of people think that they do. They have control to influence. They can do balance sheet adjustments. They can do interest rate adjustments. But the actual impact that takes place within the market is very different from what it is that a lot of people think, like, oh, the Fed could just, right? Well, they can't just do it. Like, they can just, but does it just do what it is that they are anticipating it's going to do? Well, they just printed up, during the great financial crisis, a quadrupling of the money supply of the balance sheet, and it failed them. So they can't just do whatever they want, right? It's got to take some understanding from the markets for them to be successful in their outcomes. And a lot of that comes from inflation expectations. Did you guys get all that? All right. Wick, please don't post in caps like that. I'm allergic. Yeah, Brody is very allergic to all caps, so be careful. All right. Freedom of speech. Well, that's not necessarily true on YouTube, right? Like freedom of speech out there on the street, that exists, and I'm totally down for it. So if you got a message that you want to spread out there on the street, I'm totally down for it. Go for it, right? But this is a platform that is a private company that is allowing me to use in order to spread a message. There is no freedom of speech on this channel, right? I don't have the freedom of speech. YouTube limits me on what it is that I can say. And so therefore, we also have to limit what can be said in the comment section because, again, YouTube limits the algorithm on what it is it's going to do with my channel. If I have a bunch of hate and, mainly it's hate speech, But if that's, running through the comment section, well, then my channel doesn't get shared. Well, that sucks, right? Like, I have to play the game. I have to play by their rules. I get to say essentially whatever I want, but if I talk about two particular topics, they're going to demonetize me. And it's really not two topics that you would think that they would do it to me on. Like I can talk about anything I want. I talk about all kinds of crazy stuff, anything I want. Never do I get demonetized unless I talk about people who don't have a place to live or I talk about the cannabis industry. If I put any kind of real information talking about those two particular topics, demonetized. That video does not get shared and it will have no ad revenue. All right, like literally, like I get this yellow check mark at first and then it goes red. And I'm like, weird. All the rest of them, like I could talk about whatever I want. I could talk about all the Fed. I could talk about the government. I could talk about the New World Order. I could talk about sovereign citizens. I could talk about all that stuff and no problem. But if I want to talk about people who don't have a place to live or if I want to talk about the cannabis industry, nope, done. Out of here. Okay, whatever. I mean, they make the rules, not me. I was eventually found guilty of not filing a building permit. You know what? You guys are going to be saying the same thing 10 years from now about the same time period. I wonder what that is. Make the Fed mint, not print. Yeah, well, no, we already have, you don't have to use the Federal Reserve. When you spend money in coins, that doesn't have anything to do with the Federal Reserve. That's the U.S. government. That's the U.S. Mint. That's all government stuff. Doesn't have anything to do with the private institution of the Federal Reserve. That's not Federal Reserve notes. But, trying to pay bills in quarters is going to be a little difficult, right? Yeah, but that's, once you understand that there is a lot of forms of currency that exist at the exact same time. I have a video, I don't know, I can't remember the title of it, but I've showed it a few times. I have 3 different bills, right? Dollar bills. One of them's a silver certificate. One of them's a U.S. Treasury note. And one of them's a Federal Reserve note. Now, what's interesting about it is the Federal Reserve note was from 1950. The U.S. Treasury note was from I think it was the late 50s, early 60s, something like that. And then the silver certificate was right around the same time, but a little bit after the U.S. Treasury note. Point being is that the Federal Reserve note, the U.S. Treasury note, and the silver certificate were all in circulation at the exact same time. And I doubt anybody really knew the difference. Right? But there was a profound difference between these 3 bills. Paper currency in existence at the exact same time, 3 different forms of it, right? But hardly anybody, they looked very similar, right? I mean, if you look across it, it had a dollar denomination on it, and they spent the same way. But those were 3 very different types of currencies that were in existence at the exact same time. All right. I'm a simple man, Jack in the Box, way too expensive. Melt down the bars, manufacture the coins, and circulate it into the real physical economy. JBGA It's a great idea, but you know what will happen is that Cantillon effect is going to kick in, and the moment that you bring those coins into the real physical economy, what you are going to find is foreign production taking all that physical money right out of the United States over to their foreign nation, and we will be suffering in poverty and misery on account of it. Not a good idea. Right? I mean, it's a good idea if you are in a position of holding a lot of precious metals and you are willing to withstand the storm that is going to come, because people are going to be crying in the streets about how painful and miserable of an experience it is. But you and I will probably kick ass, right? Especially if we're aware of the situation in a way that allows us to retain as much of that hoarding of gold and silver, to the point that people are crying so much over it that they will be willing to trade their house over for a handful of coins. You know, I'm not looking forward to that time, but if it does come, yeah, believe me, I'm going to take advantage of it. Right? I mean, I don't mean to sound cruel or ruthless or anything like that, but that's just the unfortunate consequences of not understanding economics. Is that people position themselves to experience pain and misery because they just didn't understand what was really happening out there. And then when other people come in and act like vultures, well, whatever, I mean, it was just like they understood what was happening. That's why they positioned themselves that way. You can't get mad at them for it. All right. Mix in percentages of purity. Nope, won't work. All right. The Romans already proved that. Have you ever tried to look up the piece of things in the past? They don't tell you the truth. Save your receipts and you will see what I'm talking about. If the Fed were ended, that would imply the use of hard currency like gold or Bitcoin. Yeah. Is that a Bitcoin symbol you got there, Brody? I didn't know they had that Bitcoin symbol like that. That's cool. All right, Simon did a video where he recorded how much he bought items at the store for. You watch 1 year from that date. If he does another one, the prices will increase. Well, yeah, that's almost a given that you're going to see price increases going into the future with a fiat currency. Like, that's the feature of it. That's a feature. I don't know if how many people realize it. It's not a feature for savings, but it's a feature for debt issuance, right? And if you know how to use that, then you can make it work for your advantage. The idea that a lot of people have behind a dollar is that it's supposed to retain value forever, right? Like, this dollar is going to have the same purchasing power in a year from now that it does today. And although it very well could, and there is a small possibility that it could actually increase in purchasing power, most likely we are going to face the same consequences that we have faced our entire lives, and that is that it's probably going to buy less, right? Now, we're well aware of it. It's not a secret. And there doesn't seem to be anything that we can really do to change that. So what do we do now? Right? I mean, we can complain about it, or we can accept it for what it really is, and that the dollar doesn't hold value, and that it's not meant to hold value, but meant to be transactions, meant to be a currency, carry my goods and services over to other goods and services. So once you let go of it being like, a retainer of value or purchasing power, you let go of that idea, then you're not concerned yourself with it anymore. And you concern yourself with more of like, how do I position myself with my paycheck or the excess that I have beyond my bills with my paycheck, so that I don't lose any more purchasing power, but actually gain purchasing power going into the future. And this is where you have to deploy it into stocks, bonds, gold, silver, Bitcoin, whatever you feel comfortable with. And knowing that if it stays in the dollar, you're going to lose the purchasing power over time. That being said, there are buying opportunities that come in the future that does give you a reason to hold on to cash. To say, hey, if I have a chunk of cash here ready to make a purchase when things become super cheap for whatever reason they do. Divorce, death, or destitution. Somebody has something to sell out there. You want to make a purchase of it. Cash talks, right? So just understand your position. Just know the consequences and know the reality. Because there's no point in complaining about it anymore, right? We just know, like, there's never been a time since we were little kids. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old, so there's never been a time that the dollar has, like, gained purchasing power as we went on. Like, it doesn't work like that. It never has, so I don't expect it to. If you have between 5 to 7 years to wait, it never matters when you buy a house. Yeah, and I mean, really, people ask me, when is a good time to buy a house? No matter what, no matter when. I don't care how many times you go back in history and you look at it, the best time to buy a house was 20 years ago. It's the same time you should have planted the tree. It was 20 years ago. You would have the tree today. So the best time to buy a house is now. Give it time. All right? If you got 20 years, if this is your house that you're planning on staying in forever, who cares? Right? It's if you can afford it, if you can bring the down payment in, and you need a place to live, and you need a house. Like, if this is an investment property you're looking to flip, then yeah, be cautious, be weird, be aware of that. But if this is a place that you're going to raise your family in for a while, and it's affordable, and it's meeting your qualifications and stuff, in 20 years you are not going to be asking the same question. I mean, here it is. It's only been 3 years, and I'm already like, not asking that question. All right, triple click that double stamp. All right, most people can't use basic tools. Homeownership will only be depreciating asset for them. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, and I experienced that myself here where I live in Astoria. It's a definite retirement, remote worker, hospital district, that kind of homeowner is coming to Astoria, and not a lot of those people are necessarily, people who know how to work on their homes. I mean, everybody can learn over time, but then a lot of people just don't even like taking on the challenge. Like, they just don't feel comfortable even doing anything at all. For example, I had an elderly couple come to me at the lumberyard asking if they knew anybody who would change a smoke detector battery. Like, they were an older couple, and they were scared to get up on a stool to change this it was a little bit high ceilings, and they were just scared to get up there on the stool to change the smoke detector, because if one of them falls, it could be it for them, So they were literally willing to pay somebody like $50 to come over and change this damn smoke detector for them. And I think to myself, man, there is a lot of people in my community that are like that. Like, this could be very well a good area to set up a small, fix and repair, handyman kind of service. For that reason, the only thing is you have to charge so damn much money to live here that I don't know if it's going to work for you. All right. You can't triple stamp and double stamp. What are you guys talking about? Exactly. And don't look for the granite countertops and the vinyl windows and all of the other fancy bells and whistles. Even if the house needs a lot of work, it is the land will retain the value. Smoke detector battery. Dear God, bring back shop class. Yeah. It wasn't that they didn't know how. It was just that they were just scared. I mean, an old couple. They were kind of, looked like they were kind of hobbling around themselves anyway, Jose, please don't post in caps. All right, The Goonies and The Stand By Me, my favorite kid movies. Oregon made great movies. Kirk, you're absolutely right. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, Astoria had a bunch of them, right? Kindergarten Cop, Free Willy, The Goonies. There was some of like the lesser known ones, like The Ring 2, Cthulhu, Come See the Paradise. What other movies? Well, those are the ones that I'm just thinking of offhand. But they make a lot of movies up here in Astoria, and I don't know. I'm guessing maybe because of overcast lighting, old area. I don't know. They make movies here. Um, you know what's funny about the Goonies movie, and I've said this before, is like everybody in Astoria, like everybody around here, we all love the Goonies movie. We all think it's a great movie, have a lot of fun talking about it and watching it and stuff like that. But we do not like anything else about it. Like none of the memorabilia, like nobody I know has Goonies stuff. Like we don't wear Goonies t-shirts or anything like nobody has any Goonies memorabilia, swag, anything like that. We just like the movie and that's it. Nothing else. All right. I don't think we are in a recession. I think it's the recessionless recession. Yeah. I said it before. I think I described it pretty well, and I think that's exactly how it played out. Is that we would see a rise in layoffs. We would see a rise in corporate failures, in bankruptcies. We would not see the unemployment rise significantly. And because most people's bad experience with the recession is a rise in unemployment and a bailing out of the corporations, if those two things don't happen, then we could literally go through what would seemingly be a recession without actually having a recession. It would be a recessionless recession. And I believe that's exactly what ended up happening. I mean, when you had such a shortage of workers like we had experienced shortly after COVID, like how could you have a rise in unemployment? Even people who lost their job you go to work serving beers or tables or going doing something of that nature. It's not a good job, but it's a job, and if it's a job, you're not unemployed, right? And that's exactly what ended up happening. Like I called it out years ago. And whether this continues on or changes into something else, we'll find out. Wayne, shop classes and cooking class. Aren't those things mom and dad are supposed to teach kids? Reliance on the state to teach your kids, come on, it's just indoctrination, daycare, school. Yeah. Plus, we have low unemployment because immigrants, God bless them. Well, low unemployment because of immigrants? Like, do immigrants hire people? Like, if there was more immigrants here, unemployment would rise, not fall, right? I guess it's because of the removal of immigrants that unemployment falls. Like, I'm not sure where the logic is in that. I don't know. Sorry. Side hustles, gig work, and barters of what you're good at against somebody else's. That's how a lot of Greece got by in the 2010s when their government and financial system failed. Yeah, and I believe that to be the case anyway. Side hustles, gig work, and bartering. Like, I think that's like that's like the skills of the average everyday person to get ahead. Like, if you can't do that, like most people are so reliant on their day job to be sufficient that they fail at just about everything that they got going on in their world. Like, they can't do anything because every time they have any kind of little hiccup or crisis, little emergency situation, it just devastates them because they don't really have anything else going on. They just have their day job, and if you need extra money, there's nothing you can do because there's only so many hours in a day, and your boss usually only gives you 8 of them. So if you're not doing something else with a side hustle or gig work or some other way of being able to generate money, yeah, it becomes very difficult out there. So there's people out there who know how to side hustle. They know how to do gig work. They know how to barter in a way that gives them the extra that they need beyond their day job, that gives them an advantage over people who are just reliant on their day job. That's why I'm not. All right. I don't rely just on my day job. All right. Hour and 58 minutes into this. Are we going to keep going? We got 184 people who have hit the like button. If you want to keep going, 242 people watching. Get it up to 200 likes and we'll continue on for a little bit longer. Otherwise, we'll just call it quit here at the 2-hour mark. All right. Wayne Smith, true. But if the system requires 2 incomes in the state daycare, Rockefeller indoctrination camps, they could at least teach things that are useful. Yeah, but it's not a matter of teaching you to be useful. It's teaching you to be in line. To don't question the authority, to stay in line, to keep, it's not a matter of teaching you to be a better person. The only your parents can teach you that, to be a better person, right? You can teach yourself if you understand that you need to teach yourself. Most people have a difficult time with that, but the school can't do it, right? The school can only teach you to follow the rules. And in fact, for the most part, because they are trying to teach everybody to behave and get along, what they actually teach is a bunch of little people-pleasing behaviors that usually ends up deteriorating people's lives over time. And that's what I end up seeing a lot out of it, is like they teach little kids to be people pleasers, and they really end up trying to dance around conforming their behavior to adapt to a safety environment or a feeling of safety in their environment that doesn't ever really give them a chance to grow and be a real human that they should have been. And they end up, failing in life for a long time because of it. So understanding that I don't know how to say it because my kids go to public school. My wife is a teacher's assistant at a public school. We see it. We recognize it. We see how it is that other parents have they raised feral children. They have no concept of raising a productive member to society who is happy with themselves and happy with the things that they got going on in their world. Like, they don't know how to do that because they just don't do it themselves. And it's scary to think about. It's sad. It is so sad. Some of these poor kids who were raised feral. Like, literally, like they have no disciplinary, like self-discipline within them, like to behavior. They have no idea of what it is. They just act wild as hell, you know? And so as these teachers and the faculty are trying to give them some sort of structure in their life of rule following, right? They literally force it into them. Like, each one of these, people who are then interacting with these kids are literally forcing it into them to behave and to conduct themselves in a way that is somewhat polite, just to stay in line and don't cut and don't hit other children and don't do these things. Like, that's what these public schools are literally teaching these kids, so that when they are adults, they know how to stand in line and not cut and not, be like just pushing and shoving. Like, I've seen videos of other nations out there who don't have, like, the stores are like a fight, and just everything's a fight, traffic's a fight, everything's a fight, because they never had any idea of being in line and being polite and following rules and stuff like that. I don't know what to tell. I don't know how to say it, it's just like, it's literally just trying to keep society from falling apart. And I think that's what public schools are about, right? Because they're not there to teach you to be a better person. They do their best. Like, I think the individual teacher has wonderful intent. Like, I think they some of them take their job very seriously, and they want these children to be better people. The individual person is, yes, that I agree. They are working hard to do that. The system of the school itself does not. End the Fed, and what entity would replace it? Why do you need something to replace it? Why do you need to end the Fed and then replace it? I'm not sure why that needs to take place. I mean, first of all, we're not going to end the Fed. There's no way that the Fed is going to end, because not enough people understand the credible threat theory to end the Fed. So, the Fed is not going to end. And the idea, the hypothetical concept of what could replace it, I think cryptocurrencies can do a great job of performing the transactions we need. So could gold and silver. Hell, even little pieces of IOU promises to each other. I think anything could work to do transactions. We don't need to force it upon us. It can naturally arise on the decisions that we as individuals make based on our own ideas of what it is that we need for our own life. You know, you think about it, in this day and age with cryptocurrencies and smart contracts, we can have contracts that are going to be fulfilled regardless of anybody else's actions. Like once the contract is set into motion, once that smart contract is set into motion, it will have a definite outcome. And you don't have to go to court to say, hey, I had a contract with this person who didn't pay me. Like, it makes the court irrelevant. It's going to come through no matter what. Okay? And so thinking about it in this fashion, man, if we had smart contracts that were, you know, so prevalent within the economy, within our transactions, it would literally make courts and governments irrelevant. Like, we don't have to change we don't have to do anything. We can just start doing things in a way that just makes them irrelevant. And it was like, yeah, okay, you guys are real important over there. Keep being important, you know, as we just continue to do transactions without them even involved. Like, they don't even know. And the more we do that, the more irrelevant we make them. They would be like, hey, you need to make us be important over here. And we'll be like, well, you're just not. Sorry. You know, it's just like, we don't have to force it. We don't have to vote for it. We don't have to do anything. We just have to perform our daily transactions in a way that just excludes them. Start doing it today. Yeah, just have that mindset and do it. All right. In my opinion, it will be centralized and controlled crypto if one takes control. Well, it's definitely happening. It's not going to be one. It's going to be stable coins, and it's already taken place. So, yeah, that's not an option. It's a definite. It's going to happen. I mean, they're already doing it. So it's like, to think that they're like, it's not an option. That's not reality. The reality is that they're already going through with it. It's taking place right now. Right? Stable coins are going to be essentially what the central bank digital currency is. And the Federal Reserve will continue to operate their monetary policy. That monetary policy will transfer right through the dollar into the stable coin. Stable coin will be what's used for most transactions out there. Cash will be removed, and the possibilities of negative interest rates will be presented. Right? This is a video we did yesterday. The IMF talked about this, 7 years ago? All right, I understand we hang on every word because of the confusion, but what will this mean? What do you mean? There is no meaning behind it other than the meaning you're going to give it, all right? So you got to internalize the information, whatever information it is that you are getting, so that you can make the best, most appropriate decisions for yourself. Because whether or not you're buying Bitcoin, gold, and silver, or trying to get into rental properties, each one of us is going to be doing something different. So what it means to you and what it means to me is really an individual choice, you know, based on your belief systems and, you know, where it is that you are in life. Steve, I think the credible threat is to keep velocity of money going, to fight, to fight natural deflation. I see it as more of a broad stroke. Yeah. I mean, really, the credible threat theory is, I think the easiest reasonings behind the credible threat theory for people to understand is that the Fed had lost the ability to do monetary policy with interest rate adjustments at the lower bound of zero. Now we have interest rates elevated, so they do have that ability back, but let's take it back a little bit. They didn't have that ability for like 10 years. Think about that. They had no ability to adjust interest rates for like 10 years for monetary policy. They developed over that 10 years, and even previous to the 10 years, because they knew they would have to do this, they started developing the communication process. on how it was that they could deliver information in order for them to conduct their monetary policy without interest rate adjustments, because the lower bound of zero was restricting that interest rate adjustments. So that right there is essentially the heart of understanding the credible threat theory, is that for 10 years, monetary policy could not be adjusted with interest rates. It could be adjusted with expectations, beliefs, narratives, communications, signaling, jawboning, right? However you want to talk about it, but the movement of Fed funds rate wasn't the option. So now we have the option of Fed fund rate adjustments, but their tools are all about communication, right? See, they can adjust rates if they wanted to, but they don't need to anymore because they developed a new tool for dealing with monetary policy. It's communications. They developed it over 10 years. They now deploy that into the economy. They have a very, very well orchestrated communication style built through the mainstream media networks of information delivery systems, right? So basically using mainstream media narrative and propagandized information. They've gotten good at it. They don't, and that's why it's so difficult for a lot of people out there, especially the well-trained, very established, institutionalized economist, is because the credible threat theory is a concept that they were never educated in, right? They were educated in the adjustment of interest rates, and this is how they operated for the longest time. And so since nobody was really made aware of how it is that the credible threat theory was really going to be deployed into the economy through the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, this wasn't trained. This is stuff that I had to figure out by reading literally thousands of speeches. Right? Thousands of speeches dating all the way back to the early 2000s. As I was reading through this and getting these pieces of information, I was picking them out here and there and finding it and compiling these into a story that was finally being told clearly, but you had to piece it together first. There's no place out there where the Federal Reserve or any economist or anybody is going to clearly communicate this out the way I do. If they did that, the whole system would start to collapse. That's why they don't do it. Right? And for an individual person like me to be literally the only one who is communicating out there, I think they have very little fear of it collapsing. I doubt anybody is going to pick up on this in such a profound way that it actually gets understood that it would be damaging to the Federal Reserve. You, however, can take full advantage of it. I mean, you think about it right now, how many people are waiting for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates by 2 percentage points because they believe Donald Trump is going to put himself in position of the chairman? Like, there's a lot of people out there who truly believe that to be the case. Like, they think interest rates are coming down just right around the corner. And yet, I'm over here saying, well, you know, the economy is less restricted than a lot of people give it credit for by the rising of the neutral interest rate. You know, you might be able to position yourself not necessarily for what it is that you believed a lowering of interest rate would do, but maybe if an interest rate was elevated, you could position yourself to take advantage of that. All right? You don't have to wait for interest rates to come down to be in a good position. There's good positions to be in today. I mean, you don't believe it, just look at the people who are actually killing it out there. They're doing it. There are people that are doing it right now. So waiting for your time, well, you might be waiting forever. Why don't you take advantage of today, right? And knowing that the communication that is coming out there through the mainstream media, that if you are seeing it on TV, if you are listening to an economist talk about it in a news report, if you are reading about it in the Wall Street Journal, it is propaganda. I guarantee you. They do not deliver the appropriate information through the mainstream media. I have never seen it. Occasionally, somebody will crest the very edge But then they'll actually, what they'll do is they will crest the very edge of the reality and then literally disassemble it and discredit the information so that you won't believe it. Right? And I've proven that. I've proven that a couple of times. Time Magazine, USA Today, both of them did the exact same thing. They talked about how it is that the Federal Reserve sees a 2% target and nothing else. And that they have this weird monetary policy that couldn't possibly see inflation at anything other than 2%. And that this 2% was just an arbitrary number invented by some New Zealand banker out there. And this is how a lot of people look at it. And so they say that the Federal Reserve has let inflation run extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time, and trying to get inflation down to a 2% target, failing to do that, and that they don't see anything other than a 2% target. This is so incorrect. This is such an incorrect way of looking at the economy and looking at monetary policy and looking at the Federal Reserve. It is wrong. Right? The Federal Reserve is attempting to get monetary policy of inflation moderately above 2% for some time. And there is no other position that the Federal Reserve, Uneducated Economist, you guys are awesome. We'll come back out another time. Oh, yeah, I can barely see this camera. Okay. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.